nationals who seek to be legally recognized. This is an urgent debate throughout the world, as most of you know, and as a party that is committed to liberal democratic values, we believe that this debate can be approached in a very responsible and balanced approach beyond the crude nationalism best typified by Donald Trump's call to build a wall. South Africa also visually stands alone on the African continent with such an unregulated approach to immigration. The ANC has failed to secure our borders, and under its watch, the Department of Home Affairs has been crippled with corruption and inefficiency to the point where it actively contributes to illegal immigration, and the South African National Defence Force has not been afforded both the human and technical resources it needs to patrol and secure our borders. The immigration system has essentially collapsed, and the ANC has clearly no ideas how to fix it. This is evidenced in widespread practice of corruption to get services, the deplorable condition at centers such as the Lindela Center, and the inability to provide basic services in communities, thereby creating an environment which often lends itself to xenophobic violence. When people in communities do not have the confidence in our immigration system to accept that foreign nationals who are here illegally, it creates mistrust that often leads to violence. There is a real threat that people believe that they are competing for basic services such as housing and healthcare. As the DA, we have therefore come with a plan to turn this crisis around and protect both South Africans and foreign nationals. It is a fact that South Africa has poor border control systems that are unable to accurately and efficiently record the movement of people and goods through our borders. South Africa's landward border stretches around 4,800 kilometers. We currently only have 15 out of the 22 necessary SANDF units to patrol our border. Our borders are porous and in far too many instances non-existent or not patrolled effectively because South African National Defence Force again doesn't have all the resources and the infrastructure it needs to do its job effectively. We also have an overburdened and under-resourced asylum system plagued by corruption and persistent backlogs. According to the Department of Home Affairs, a backlog of 140,000 asylum claims has not been finalized. Civil society organizations, however, argue that this number is actually understated because it doesn't include any claims which fall outside of the system for various examples, such as permits not being renewed timelessly. Backlogs are further worsened by the failure of Home Affairs, together with the Department of Public Works, to timelessly give effect to Constitutional Court orders to reopen refugee centers in both Cape Town and Port Elizabeth. The failure to open these reception offices means that the department has essentially imposed undocumented status on law-abiding immigrants who want to regularize their stay, but are unable to do so because either their nearest office is shut down or the one that they can actually go to is overburdened, and it takes time for them to be attended to and then ultimately processed. This, combined with the endemic corruption and inefficiency at all levels in our immigration system, means that fair and timely finalization of visas and asylum applications is almost impossible. This inefficiency is precisely what makes the ANC government complicit in creating the issue of illegal immigration in South Africa. Even those who seek to be legal abiding residents in our country are unable to do so because their relevant document is either lost, delayed, or never forthcoming. Again, this goes back to the issue of lack of appropriate capacity in Home Affairs. In addition, with this crisis plaguing reception offices and Home Affairs across the country, the government lacks the progressive and efficient policies to attract the kind of tourists and skilled laborers and capital, as well as trained personnel to implement those policies. And lastly, we are failing to address the recurring scourge of xenophobic violence that has devastating cost to the victims primarily, but also to our economy and social cohesion more generally. These challenges have serious consequences on our society, on the state, and the blame lies solely with the government of the day, which is the ANC. From this end, I'll hand over to my colleague, Jack Julius, who will take us through the background of the ANC's failures and also the key interventions that the DA will effect.
Thank you, Solly. Let me start with the consequences of the ANC's failing immigration system. The failure of the national government to secure our borders by running our border management systems efficiently, and the collapse of border security means that we do not have reliable numbers of immigrants entering the country on a daily basis. Estimates have ranged from hundreds of thousands to millions. And this lack of critical data on immigration means that the government cannot know or plan to provide services to our own citizens and to those immigrants who are here legally. It is impossible to make proper plans for service delivery with no reliable data on which to base decisions concerning budget allocations. More than this, the ANC government does not know how many people are here illegally and how many people are placing an unaccounted burden on service delivery. The failure of Home Affairs to prevent, detect, and correct undocumented migration means that many thousands of undocumented migrants have been living in South Africa for longer periods of time. These are people who have families in South Africa, who work and have businesses here, and to make invaluable contributions to their communities. Mass deportation is not only physically prohibitive or fiscally prohibitive, but it may also very well be unjust to the immigrants in question and harmful to their communities. The ANC government has no clear program for fairly addressing this category of immigrants. The failing immigration system means that law enforcement agencies cannot effectively combat crime. Law-abiding citizens and residents cannot feel safe in South Africa because we cannot be confident that law enforcement agencies have a handle of the scale of cross-border crime. The Department of Home Affairs is notoriously corrupt. This corruption, together with institutional inefficiencies in the asylum system, makes it extremely difficult for those foreign nationals who are making genuine attempts to gain legitimate documentation. Until this is back on the correct path, we will not attract investment. We will not attract skilled workers who want orderly lives and have no need to expose themselves to victimization by our system. The cumulative result of these many failures of immigration and border management is a perception amongst many South Africans that immigrants who may well be in South Africa legally have entered the country illegally and take jobs or commit crime. That's the perception. We have seen the horrific results of these perceptions as unskilled, skilled, legal, and illegal foreign nationals have become victims of prejudicial harassment, exploitation, violence, and crime. Having witnessed 24 years of ANC government failure on this critical national function, South Africa cannot afford to wait any longer for a progressive, efficient system capable of providing legal certainty to those who would contribute to our nation and peace of mind to our people. The ANC has proven that they are incapable of addressing and fixing the challenges of immigration and border security, leaving South Africans and immigrants to bear the brunt. South Africa have rightly lost faith in the ability and willingness of the ANC government to restore law and order, to keep us safe, and put in place a policy framework that will make South Africa an attractive destination to the skilled laborers we so desperately need. South Africa needs leadership and change that will deal with the problems we face. The DA is the only party capable of fixing immigration and border security, which has crumbled under the failing ANC. We have a plan which will bring law and order and protect the interests of those who reside and move within our country legally. The DA-led government will act immediately to secure our borders and stop illegal immigration and thereby create order by doing the following. 1. We will strengthen our border security through proper control and order. that can create corruption-free and effective border security and control. This will be done through revamping improving our border management and governmental coordination. The DA will review the number and size of border posts and their management to increase points of legal entry and exit, prevent criminal activity, and secure inter-border transregional business. Immigration officials and police officers will be trained and equipped to carry out their duties with diligence and integrity to ensure the best possible service to all foreign nationals entering this country. We must ensure that border management results in a continuous decline in cross-border crimes within our country and between the borders of our country and our neighboring states. Eradicating the corruption and efficiency endemic to Home Affairs. This includes ensuring that the corruption and efficiency endemic in Home Affairs is eradicated. This will involve initiating a once-off investigation into corruption in the department led by a reformed Hawks. Any officials found guilty of corruption and/or fraud will be blacklisted and prevented from working for any state agency or government department. To address inefficiency, the DA would enhance and improve the system and technology, capacity and competency levels through adequate training to officials at Home Affairs. Thirdly, we will arrest, detain and deport those who repeatedly enter the country illegally. A DA government would ensure that centers like Lindela are dignified, well-serviced and provide for humane living conditions. Currently, those areas are in contravention of the Refugees Act, Act number 135 of 1998, and the commitment we made to adhering to the United Nations High Commission of Refugees, international principles and standards relating to asylum seekers and refugees. Fourthly, we will ensure undocumented immigrants are regularized or assisted in leaving the country if they do not meet the criteria for remaining in the country. This requires innovative and strategic interventions to properly record and regularize undocumented foreign nationals already in the country and actively protect, rescue, and host refugees and those who have been trafficked, smuggled or abused within or across our borders. We also believe that it's important to assist, support, care for legitimate refugees and asylum seekers. We must attract foreign nationals with scarce skills to South Africa to help us grow our economy and create jobs. Skilled immigrants and business people must be welcomed into our country. We need to attract highly skilled immigrants to fill our skills gap and to allow them to build businesses and create jobs. This will require a program of action which must include educating communities about the benefits of integration and social cohesion with those from other countries. Xenophobia and discrimination cannot be allowed to hold back or hamper the progress of our economy and our people, or harm economic integration and social unity in Africa. Foreign skilled nationals will not only drive economic growth through filling the skills gap, but they can also enhance innovation, which is essential for small business development and the manufacturing sector. Skilled immigrants also brings a wealth of knowledge and context with it that could be immensely beneficial for local companies with sights on international expansion. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. I'll now hand over to Solim Simang.
Thank you very much and good morning, everybody. Gauteng as a province is struggling in terms of ensuring that we are able to provide quality services to our people. And this is due to the influx, both coming from other provinces or from rural areas into the urban setup, which is something that you cannot really deny or actually stop. But you also now having a big influx of people that are undocumented that finding themselves into many of our cities within Gauteng. A typical example is what we're having now in Plastic View, is what we're having in Mooiplaats, is what we're having in certain parts of Ulven Old Bosch, and what you're having in certain parts of Alexander as it's expanding, and so on and so forth. And therefore, it becomes a bit problematic to plan from a government perspective in terms of the people that are flowing into your province. That for one, you cannot even know at any given time how many people are coming into your province. If you don't know how many people you're supposed to be catering for, how are you going to ensure that you have enough beds in your hospitals? How are you going to make sure that you have enough schools? As things stand right now, and if you look at the report that is coming from the Gauteng legislature and with the NCOP, it says that Gauteng now is in need of 130 plus schools, brand new schools that now needs to be built in order for us to be catering for the numbers that are increasing on an ongoing basis. But then also is not matched by the grant that is coming from national government in terms of equitable share, which then tells you that there is a little bit of a skewedness that is in terms of how the issues of in-migration, whether it's coming from within the borders of South Africa or externally, that is now creating a problem. Give you a typical example. Home Affairs in 2017 says that it had 384,000 people that were registered as coming into the country from Zimbabwe, but only 27,000 can be accounted for. So that tells you that there is a huge problem. That is even less than 10% of the people that came into the country that cannot even be accounted for. And therefore, that tells you that you have more and more people that are coming into your country. But then, you're not able to then account for them so that you can actually plan, so that you are able to then provide services for them. We're also now sitting in a predicament where you cannot even begin to build houses for the same people that are here. So this is why you also have now an ongoing problem of informal settlement or actually, illegal land grabs that have been taking place, of late. And that is something that the ANC government needs to take responsibility of. And this is why I wrote to Minister Gigaba to say that he needs to come and take up some of the responsibility in what is happening here. The fact of the matter is, even if you go to Home Affairs offices in Marabastad, those are not adequately equipped to deal with the numbers that are coming there. There's a lot of corruption that is taking place. There's some of our colleagues actually were turned away when they tried to go in and see what was happening in those offices. You have officials and some of the ringleaders, running amok around that particular area there, and that is something that cannot be allowed to continue. I'm also of the belief that you can never grow a country, a city, a province purely on the people that are within the who were born and raised in that particular setup. You need skilled migrants. You need different mindsets. You need different views that need to help you, to make it. And this is something that has happened throughout the world. Any country that has ever succeeded has never done so, on its own. There's always been an element of in-migration that has helped in that particular instance. And I think that's what we are going to need to also live up with here. But we are saying that the corruption that has been taking place, including within the SANDF that is deployed at our borders, has left very, very much to be desired, and something that needs to be looked at and needs to be looked at very, very urgently. And the ANC needs to take the full blame for this, or else we're not going to be able to then reach the promised land that we have promised the people of houses, of quality education, of quality healthcare services. If you're not going to know how many people you need to be catering for, or you need to be planning for, how are you then going to ensure that you have all the resources at your hand, to be able to then do that? This leads me to another point of, the undocumented people, and this has come up time and time again during our listening tour, where people say that we have laid criminal charges against certain people. Fingerprints were taken, but cannot be found in any way in our system because these people, some of them, are undocumented. So those are some of the challenges that we're sitting with that needs to be addressed in the long run. So we are calling on ensuring that the Home Affairs come on board to make sure that all the people that are in our provinces, or let me talk here in Gauteng, at least needs to ensure that they are properly documented. For those that do qualify to be in the country, are properly documented and assisted to be in the country. Those that don't qualify are safely assisted to go back into their country of origin. We've also now tried to engage with a number of embassies as well, in terms of saying to them, you need to then be able to assist us in getting some of your people documentation. And this assistance hasn't been forthcoming. For instance, when you have deaths in areas like your plastic view, you now need to struggle to get somebody home because there's no proper documentation of the person while they're in the country. So those are some of the challenges that we are sitting with, and these are things that I think needs to be addressed going forward. And we're calling on the ANC, to really step up and do what needs to be done here. If they fail to do so, and we, as Jacques has said, there's already a plan that we're putting in place. And we want to say to the people of South Africa that should the ANC, and when the ANC fails to do this, the DA will be there to take this forward. So we are saying again, we need to strengthen our border security. We need to ensure that we eradicate the corruption and efficiency endemic at Home Affairs, as I alluded to earlier on. We need to ensure that all undocumented immigrants are regularized or assisted in leaving the country. And also we need to make sure that there is a firm grasp on who is in the country at all times. And in provinces, in order for us to adequately plan for our service delivery to our people. We would also not allow the scapegoating of foreign nationals for poor service delivery in communities. We cannot blame that we cannot blame foreign nationals, for lack of service delivery that is taking place in our communities. But we need to be adequately able to plan for those that are within our borders as well. We also now need to ensure that we attract scarce skills from across the continent and from the world. This requires an efficient and clean governance at Home Affairs, and this is something that the ANC has clearly failed to do so far.
Cool. Thanks very much, Sorry. Jack, please do the wrap up and then we can take questions.
Thank you, Solly. It's Solly all the time. With this plan, we can approach regular and irregular migration more successfully by eliminating corruption, poor leadership, and policy uncertainty. The DA's immigration plan will not only fix undocumented immigration and fix the dysfunctional Department of Home Affairs, but it will ultimately secure our borders. This will provide the protection of both South Africans and foreign nationals who live in our country. The issue of unchecked illegal immigration is a powder keg matter. We can no longer afford the failing ANC's lax border control and dysfunctional Home Affairs. We believe that South Africa should adopt, there's a notion of one of the experts, immigration experts, Thomas Freeman, that says, I am for high walls. But then there must be a big gate. So we are of the notion that if we have high walls, we must have a big gate. And we believe that we must welcome our foreign nationals. They must do so legally, though, and South Africans must be able to trust the system is effectively protecting them. We are committed to build one South Africa for all, where South African citizens, residents, refugees, and immigrants can come together and build towards a free, fair, and diverse society with opportunities for all those who are here legally. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jack. So we'll take questions. The normal practice applies. You just identify yourself, the media house that you represent, and ask the questions. We'll then do the response at once. So any takers for questions? Sure. Are you the only hand? You'll be second. Sure. Let's start with you.
I'm Silver from Independent. I'll confine my two questions to the immigrants that are currently here who are undocumented. One, you are saying there's corruption in the Department of Home Affairs. Are you saying this as a function of perception, or do you have any evidence in relation to that? I'm asking this question because we're approaching 2019 general election. The issue of immigration is a very emotive one, and you can use the political parties to lobby for support. Do you have any evidence, or is it a function of perception? Secondly, it is not obvious, one would assume that it's not in the interest of undocumented immigrants to come forward when they know that, for example, they will not be viewed as immigrants who are actually legitimately in South Africa, and they know that they may not be even succeeding when they apply for asylum to be viewed as refugees, and they know that they may be deported if they come forward. So even coming forward to say document us is not in their interest. So they may run away from even being documented, which may be a take touch for people in government. How do you as a DA plan to ensure that those people who are undocumented, who have no interest in being documented, who came knowing that they're undocumented, had no interest even when they entered the border, because they are deliberately running away from being documented? How do you have a clear plan in terms of how would you ensure that they are documented if they have no interest in coming forward?
Sure.
Thanks, Clement Manyatela from Eyewitness News. I just want to find out if SANDF has been able to look at the kind of strain that undocumented migrants have on, say, hospitals and schools. Have you been able to look at that for you to come and say, you know, that becomes problematic in that regard? The second question is on, are you not worried about this message going into elections? I mean, Sibuya talks about it being an emotive issue, and some people may come and say you are taking foreigners. We know, and I think we've seen a lot of evidence with, you know, prominent leaders when they talk about the issue of migrants, be it undocumented or otherwise. That message can be received differently on the ground by people, and that may lead, as we've seen previously, to you know, attacks on foreign nationals. Are you not worried at all as the DA? How are you going to address this, you know, as you campaign or as you preach and continue with this message to sort out the mess that is Home Affairs and the security at our borders, without, of course, the risk of, you know, foreigners feeling attacked?
Sure.
All right, I will go first with the issue of the impact that it has. There's a study that was conducted by the National Council of Provinces and the Gauteng provincial government. It's very detailed in terms of the level of or the lack of in terms of the schools that now needs to be built. As I said, there needs to be over 100 or 130 plus schools that needs to be now built to be able to then accommodate the growing numbers that are flocking into Gauteng. Charlotte Macleod, as an example, had to write off close on R1 billion in terms of uncollected amount. And when you go dig, or when you dig deeper into what would have cost that R1 billion is either people that were undocumented, therefore you don't have any record whatsoever, so you cannot now go and claim some of that money back in terms of the services that had been provided. So those are some of the examples that are there. There's a hospital that during our listening tour in Etwatwa that we went to, that is a 804 hospital, a bed hospital, but it's now catering for 1,405 people. So that tells you, and if you go and talk to the people that are there, you find that most of them are people who are undocumented and are in need of healthcare service. And by the way, you have to, by law, you cannot turn anybody away, whether they are legal or illegal in your country. If there is a health service that is needed, you need to make sure that that is provided to them. So that is some of the impact that this has had, in terms of where we are with migration. I must also highlight this. We're not asking, for a flare-up of violence or attack on foreign nationals. We are saying that the ANC government must own up on what they have done. They must actually begin to correct this, or we will correct it after 2019. And this is what we are saying, that first of all, we need to make sure that you are able to redeploy more South African defense force to our borders. You need to make sure that your borders are actually adequately maintained. I mean, you have seen documentation, Clement, over and over, video documentation, where people are just walking across borders. You can go into some of the border posts where people are just literally just waltzing across. So those are some of the things that needs to be looked at. And I think if we are going to, just keep quiet about this, we will find ourselves in deeper and deeper trouble going into the future.
Yes. Thank you for the questions. I think, how do we plan? We will have an amnesty period where people will come forward. I would agree with you, it will be difficult. I'm not saying it will be easy, but something must be done so that people come and get documented in South Africa. The current system is failing them because, in all fairness, people are trying to get documented. There are those that do not want to be documented because they're in the country. But they cannot live forever like that in a country because they need these services. All emergency services within the borders of South Africa are available to all people in the borders of our country at any given stage, but they must be documented. So there must be efforts to document them, a welcoming effort to document them. So the amnesty period that we will provide, I think will go a very, very long way in helping to document undocumented foreign nationals currently in South Africa. But I agree with you, it will be difficult. The message of that we must not be seen as attacking foreigners. To the contrary, I think this is actually necessary because we have a real issue in South Africa. Like Solly said, staying away from the issue will help no one. I think the DA is very brave to actually go into the issue and taking the issue on. We know it's a very, very sensitive issue, and we will handle it that way. But if you do not take on the issue, it will not help anyone. But when we take on the issue, remember that foreign nationals, the perception currently out there is that all foreign nationals are taking people's jobs, are taking opportunities from them. All foreign nationals are taking services away from our people, and it is not. There's no proper reliable sources that actually says that this is a fact. What we actually want to do is we must try and find a way of telling South Africans to get rid of that perception. We want to try and get rid of that perception that foreign nationals are the enemies of people's services and the opportunities. We want to instead create that environment where foreign nationals are actually welcomed into the country. And one way of doing it is to give South Africans the right state of mind that our borders are actually secured. So the whole process will actually protect foreign nationals rather than going the xenophobic way. And I think it must be done. It should have been done a long time by the ANC, but they failed our people. Our people are not happy about the borders being porous. People are just coming in and out as like you see, and we'll prove it to you with the months to come. We've already proven to you. We'll prove it with the months to come. How people are just going in and out. People are not happy with that. And that creates the perception that foreign nationals are taking away service from people. They think all of them are illegal in the country. And if we fix the borders, I can guarantee you people's perception will change and we'll do something about the attack on foreign nationals and this xenophobic tendencies, because we need to do it. We are part of Africa and we want to open our borders to Africans who must come into the country. Whether you are from Switzerland or Swaziland, we want to make sure that you are in the country legally and you help build our economy. That is the DA stance currently. Thank you, sir.
I mean, in addition, Sibiwa, the plan as is quite proactive in terms of providing an environment wherein if you're a foreign national and you want to come to South Africa, you know that you will go to a Home Affairs office that is fully staffed, that has the capacity to process your application, that our borders will be secure so that you can get into the country legally protected and enjoy the rights that South Africans have. But second to that is the element of illegal behavior that comes in, because you are also dealing with a different group. There will be those, as you correctly say, that would want to bypass that process. And in the plan, we outline very specifically about the proactive steps that we would take to assist those that want to be documented, and those that are deliberately trying to stay in the country for extended periods illegally. So we'll put measures in place to deport them in a dignified way so that we don't have a recurrence of the current situation where people are treated so inhumanly at our exit points such as Lindela. And with regards to the issue of that, Clement, that you raised with an emotive issue going to elections, the reality of the situation is that immigration affects us all. And as a country that's trying to build both social cohesion and make sure that we attract the right kind of skills and the investment that we need to make sure that South Africa becomes a home for anyone who either wants to live, to work, to study, and build a future here. But you can do that by making sure that those with the skills that the country needs that will contribute to the economy, you make it easier for them to come into the country. But no country in the world will create an environment wherein law and order does not apply. It is quite important that the law takes its course where the law is being broken. And that's the balance that this plan seeks to achieve in making sure that all those, whether you are from Belarus or Botswana, if you have the skills that South Africa needs, and you meet the criteria that we need, will make it easier for you to study here, to invest here, to contribute towards the economy, because we want people that are here to contribute positively towards the growth of our country. Crime can be committed by anyone, be it a South African or an illegal immigrant. This plan is to make sure that those that want to live in South Africa and make a home in South Africa, we provide the infrastructure for them to do so.
There was a question on
corruption.
affects the corruption. Many people have been arrested for this at the Department of Home Affairs. In 2016, 18 people were arrested, and 2017, 10 more were arrested. But that doesn't speak to the magnitude of the problem. You know, it's too little. We need more action in the Department of Home Affairs, because you cannot say 10 and 80 people, arrested. Yes, some of the things are from communities out there. I was part of the NCOP delegation, and when you go to Home Affairs, people outside are telling you about this. And I think that's also, people's issues are scientific issues. It's not actually tested or so, but we can use it, as information going forward, because we must listen to the people. And they told us that, I think you'll read in the report of the NCOP, they're coming back in November, where they actually will tell us that people are saying that they have problems with corruption and fraud in Home Affairs. So it is a real problem, and there were people arrested for it, but we think it's not enough. More should be done.
Just to add on that, most recently at the border of Maseru and Free State, at that entry point in the Free State of Lesotho and South Africa, we went there to conduct an oversight visit with Patricia Kopani, who's the leader in the Free State, 3 months ago. And what we found in there was chronic understaff in both SAPS, SARS, and Home Affairs. And we found that there were allegations of corruption, and investigation was done, and it resulted in 26 suspensions of state officials who were colluding with people committing crime, both from the South African border and Lesotho border, in order to smuggle either goods or stock or people through the illegal movement in that area. And that just shows you the extent of the corruption that has happened and that continues to happen. Of course, in other areas, it's at a lesser scale or at a bigger scale, but the reality of the situation is that the corruption that happens in Home Affairs or at entry points in the country has become one of the things that drive away foreign nationals from actually seeking the right path of entering into the country. And it's one of the things that has, over time, contributed and even to the growth of illegal immigration. Are there any other questions? Sure, let's take and you'll do. Okay, I'll take both of you, and then Clement will close up with his follow-up.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to get an update on plastic. You had mentioned that there are some challenges around that area. Can I just get an update from them? I'm Swati from Jacaranda.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Gatsile Kani from How TV News. I have two questions. So just now you spoke of having to visit the border gates, of course, and you mentioned that they were understaffed. I don't understand how we could reach the point of having some place understaffed and then South Africa goes through a phase where unemployment increases, which highly doesn't make sense. And so I just want to find out how you're tackling some of the issues that have to do with visiting areas and finding other problems and rather dealing with the other problems that have nothing to do with what South Africa is currently facing. And then the other issue, the other question is, of course, in relation to saying that if ANC doesn't step up to some of the things that they say that they will do, you will, however, step up. Don't you feel that it's necessary to step up irrespective of whether ANC does or doesn't? And why is it that you're facing the direction of what the ANC does or doesn't?
Sure. Aldrin, and you'll wrap up with the follow-ups.
Alden Sampier from ENCA. Mr. Msimang, what would you say would be the biggest problem that could unfold if this issue around illegal immigrants is not dealt with by the government? Has the DA at all polled and asked people around this province, which is mostly affected by this issue around illegal immigrants, about how the people feel, specifically in Johannesburg and Pretoria? And Mr. Msimang, you speak about going on road shows and how some people have complained on the issue around illegal immigrants, and you speak about the hospital. And Jacques, on the other hand, then says that we must get away with this narrative that foreign nationals are stealing our jobs. But this is not what we are saying, this is what the people are saying. It is the people that Solim Simanga speaks to when he goes onto these roadshows who say that our jobs are being stolen by illegal immigrants. Why is it that the DA is not embracing that concept that indeed it could be a matter of fact, as we've seen in the city of Joburg as well, and Herman Mashaba has spoken on that issue as well?
Sure, Clement, get the follow-up.
He covered the first question. I wanted to ask about the poll. Have you done any polling to find out if this is a burning issue amongst potential voters in Gauteng?
Okay.
This issue of undocumented.
So it relates to that question, so we'll wrap it up. Yeah. So did you want to be first with the Gauteng specific ones?
Okay. All right. Sebastian, the issue of Plastic View. Plastic View has already got a plan that has already been approved, and a developer that is ready to hit the ground running. But we cannot, because we've also now been taken to court by the human rights lawyers, who are saying that if you are going to move these people, you have to build houses for them. Now, legislation prohibits me from building anybody or even giving somebody a piece of land or even building them a house if they don't have any kind of documentation, a South African documentation. So how do you then begin to then do that? This is why now you have such a big delay. Now, when we did check marking in Plastic View, we realized that about 85% of those people that are living there are actually foreign nationals, and 85% of them are actually undocumented. So now you're sitting with that particular problem that you now cannot do anything about building them, better infrastructure than what they have there. So you can give them rudimentary service, which we are doing. But in terms of then the development, that is actually now the delay. And this is why we're asking that Minister Kigaba must come on board. Either we go and find a way of regularizing the people that are there, or make sure that we are able to then assist the people to go back home. One of the things that we wanted to do was to then remove them from that particular space, to move them into another space, which they then refuse and say, you are taking us far away from, the jobs that we are doing in the suburbs around us. So that is now a big challenge that we're sitting with. We did provide them with relief services last week, and we'll continue to do that as humanly possible at this point in time, and we'll continue to do that. But I think it's important for us to then say, how do we then not just address the symptoms, but address the real issue. The real issue is that unless you get people to be documented properly, or unless you get them, to follow the process, you're not going to be able to then address this in the long run. I think that's where the challenge is. Kapsile, you're asking about stepping up, whether we step up now. What do I mean when I say step up? I'm talking about the people who are controlling the levers of government right at this point in time. This is what exactly I'm referring to when I say we will step up, because we're talking about what happens when we do take over. What we're trying to do right now is to push government to do what needs to be done. This is why Herman has been writing to the ministers. This is why I've been writing to the minister as well, to say you need to then take responsibility of some of these things that are happening around. And if you're not going to be able to do that, then you need to go and explain to the residents of South Africa as to why you're not able to then adequately address this situation that is becoming a bigger problem for us to deal with. Aldrin, and I think that talks to the point that you're raising about the perception. The perception is that, people are coming into our country, people are committing crime, and, because you don't have any kind of documentations where you're not even able to then say, once you collect those fingerprints from a crime scene, you are able to then, verify and get to know exactly who the person is. That is a perception that is there. But it's not entirely true that every foreign national that is in South Africa is here illegally or is here to commit crime. I think that is one of the perceptions that we now need to make sure that we clear with our residents. And also, there's a silly one that foreign nationals are taking away our women. I don't know any woman. I'm one married to somebody of a Zambian origin. So you can marry across, or you can date whoever you want across the spectrum of Africa or the world. But the point of the matter is that until we address the issue of how people are coming into the country and giving the South African residents an assurance that we are in control of the situation, we are going to have the perception continuing to happen amongst our residents, and that is not a safe place to be.
Yes, thank you. The issue of understaffed, it's an issue that we are taking up. I mean, as opposition, that's our job, to actually find out the facts for ourselves and taking it up with the department. I agree with you. There are other issues that needs urgent attention. People are unemployed in the country, and we see areas where it's understaffed. It's not acceptable. I totally agree with you. Aldrin, the issue of perception is something that we really have to get rid of in the country. Like Solly said, it's a perception out there. It is not the reality, and we have to get rid of this perception in the country so that we can safeguard South Africans and foreign nationals that are in the country. Whether at this stage they are legally here or illegally here, we cannot allow for xenophobic sentiments, and that is what we have to do. We have to close our borders. The fact that our borders are porous, people can just enter the country, like I said earlier, gives the perception to people that all foreigners are illegal in the country. And that is what we need to change. The ANC created this thing by not taking care of our borders for 24 years now. And that is where the real problem started. If people were documented at that time, we wouldn't have sat with this challenge now. And I think it is something that we take on. Again, I say, the DA is very serious about this issue. We know it's a sensitive issue, but we're taking it on because we have the guts to take on this problem that South Africans are facing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack and Solly. I think to go back to the point that keeps coming up about perception, we're dealing with the reality of the situation wherein the source of the scenario we find ourselves in is government failure. It's honestly government failure through its inability to manage immigration very well, through its inability to make sure that our borders are secure, through its inability to provide support to the skilled immigrants who want to come into South Africa and work or renew their permits for those that were in. The process is so arduous that it becomes so cumbersome and difficult to retain those skills. And that also leads to the skills that we end up losing. There are a lot of professions in engineering, teaching that South Africa could be benefiting from through our SADC countries or the rest of the continent that are finding it difficult to come and offer those skills in the country because the process is so difficult. So it is therefore very unfair to blame immigrants for unemployment. It is the state that is failing to provide the conditions that attract the investment that will create the jobs that will be adequate for all South Africans to have access to jobs. And lastly, to the question that both Aldrin and Clement raised with regards to polling, this is not a thumbsuck conclusion that we've got to. It's taken an extensive amount of research in terms of identifying the issues that are important to the electorate and the issues that we need to speak to in as part of offering solutions to the issues that South Africa face. So we've done a lot of introspection internally and research in terms of even crafting our position the way it is. And there's a lot of detail in the document that has been distributed to you. And if you go through it very, very carefully, you'll realize that we're trying to provide a very fair balance of providing support to those that needed to remain in the country and making sure that, most importantly, we attract the skills and the investment that we need to tackle unemployment, and to do so with dignity, so that where the law is broken, those that need to be deported, we can do so in a dignified way, respecting the rights of people as enshrined in our Constitution.
So I think my questions are not answered.
Yeah.
The first question is, if this issue is not dealt with, what is the biggest problem that you foresee? And the other issue is on illegal immigrants stealing jobs.
Yeah.
Have you done research that says that this is not a fact, not based on your personal perception as well? Because it is a fact that if you go into some companies, and including restaurants as well, that you will find people who are working there who are illegal immigrants, who are undocumented. And the DA has today at least not spoken at least about the role that companies should be playing in ensuring that they only hire people who are legally in the country.
Okay, let me deal with the issue of what will happen, Aldrin. The first thing is that every sphere of government has to plan. This is why the local government, you have what we call an integrated development plan, an IDP plan. Because then you're able to then say, in this particular area, I'm either going to build a clinic or I'm going to build so many houses, I'm going to electrify, so many houses, and so on and so forth. Now, if you are failing to then know and have an understanding of how many people are actually coming in, into your particular area at any given point in time, you are not going to be able to then adequately plan, which will lead you to having a failed, departments, as we have seen, the Department of Education. You cannot have, in a normal situation where you're having 60, 70 learners in a particular class. That is actually a recipe for disaster, because then you're going to have, very, very bad quality that is actually administered to these children. And this happens as well, as I was mentioning earlier on, with, the hospitals. We're now having, hospitals that are supposed to be catering for 805, but end up catering for over 1,400 people at any given time, meaning that you need to admit those kind of people under, very bad conditions. And also, how do you then ensure that those that are actually using services that they need to pay for are actually able to then pay for those services once they've used them? But if you don't have anywhere where somebody can give you an address, can give you an ID number, how are you able to then track these people down? And that is the problem that we're sitting with. And if we're not going to be able to address that, Adrian, we're going to have a serious challenge going forward, not only of planning but also of executing, because we are actually now dealing with limited resources and with a great demand that is growing on a daily basis.
Yeah. I think on the... Is there another?
And then, no, just wrap up that and then do one-on-ones. Yeah.
I think there are labor inspectors, immigration inspectors in our country that's supposed to make sure that these people, it's contained in the document, that we talk about that, we do address it in the document where we need to check. I think there are only 300 immigration inspectors in the country, and we propose that we increase this to have more immigration inspectors to make sure that foreign nationals or illegal foreign nationals or these places are inspected. But you'll see it in the document, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Those who want to do one-on-ones, Soli, will you be available, or are you...
Just 10 minutes.
Okay, so we'll all be available. Soli has 10 minutes for one-on-ones if there are any. And thank you very much for coming to our presser.
There's 1 and 2 in plastic view. In plastic view 1, there's goes on 2,500, and in another one, I think that's another 1,002.
Thank you.